Right now, in this quiet moment where your awareness touches these words, you are doing something extraordinary without even realizing it. You are sitting in a three-dimensional body, breathing three-dimensional air, looking out at a three-dimensional world, all while your deeper self is already extending through an invisible architecture of 11 dimensions, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but structurally, physically, mathematically. You believe you are here in a room, in a posture, in a sequence of thoughts passing through your mind like clouds drifting across a sky. But that here is only the thinnest slice of where you actually exist. The rest of you, the part you can't name, the part that moves before thought and senses life before language, is spread across a hierarchy of dimensions that quietly shape everything you know as reality. Dimensions you were never taught to trust, but have always felt in the subtle pull of intuition, the strange wideness of presence, the moments that feel like echoes of a truth you never learned but somehow remember. You're not just living inside a universe, you are woven into its hidden layers. Every cell in your body vibrates inside a geometry more intricate than your senses could ever reveal. Every neuron fires inside a field whose depth stretches far beyond the limits of ordinary perception. You feel like one being, but you are more like a projection, a three-dimensional expression of a far larger presence, folded into dimensions far too small, far too curved, far too subtle for your eyes to see. Listen closely to the space around you. The air between you and the nearest wall is not empty. It is saturated with dimensions curled so tightly they escape sight the same way the circumference of a distant wire escapes detection. Yet they're here in this moment, shaping the motion of particles, the structure of forces, and the whisper of consciousness inside your mind. You've been taught to trust what you can measure, but reality doesn't limit itself to the tools you've been given. The universe hides its deeper layers not to deceive you, but because your senses evolved only to navigate the surface, not the architecture beneath it. And yet, some part of you has always known, in the stillness between thoughts, in the feeling that your awareness extends beyond the container of your body, in the strange intuition that you are participating in something much larger than a life defined by time, space, and matter. The truth is simple and astonishing. You're not waiting to enter the 11th dimension. You've never left it. You've been breathing it, thinking inside it, dreaming through it. Every choice, every memory, every spark of insight is a ripple moving through a holographic structure far larger than the physical world you see. You are not confined to your senses. Your senses are the narrow doorway through which a vastness peers in. Tonight, we cross that doorway, together. Not through equations, though the equations exist. Not through belief, though belief has its place. But through recognition, the deep, quiet remembrance that your consciousness has always been multidimensional, always aware of more than your eyes reveal, always brushing against the edges of an invisible architecture that has shaped you since the first moment of your existence. Settle in, slow your breathing. Because the moment you stop trying to grasp reality with your mind, reality begins to reveal itself through you. You are already living in the 11th dimension. It's time to remember what that means. Core premise. To understand why you're already living in the 11th dimension, we have to begin with a single, deceptively simple question, one that has quietly haunted the greatest physicists, philosophers, and mystics for centuries. Why does reality work at all? Not why it exists, not what it's made of, but why it behaves with such improbable precision. Why particles move the way they do. Why forces balance themselves with uncanny harmony. Why mathematics pure abstraction maps perfectly onto the behavior of stars, electrons, and even the thoughts rising in your mind. The answer, according to the most ambitious scientific frameworks ever attempted, lies not in the dimensions you see, but in the ones you don't. Modern physics discovered something startling. The fabric of our universe behaves as though it is being shaped, tuned, and orchestrated by structures that do not fully reside inside the familiar arena of space and time. Even Einstein suspected it, that something deeper than geometry and mass was at play. David Bohm felt it in the implicate order beneath observable events. And string theorists eventually confronted it head-on. The equations simply refused to make sense unless reality possessed more dimensions than we can observe. The universe works because it has room to work. Hidden room, folded dimensions so compact, so elegantly curled that their presence can only be inferred through the harmony they impose. This is the core premise. Your three-dimensional world is the shadow of a far richer architecture, an 11-dimensional whole where the laws of physics, the structure of matter, and the very shape of consciousness all converge. Your body is only the visible part of the story. Your thoughts move through circuits shaped by fields that arise from deeper layers of reality. Your emotions ripple through a nervous system made possible by constants determined by the geometry of dimensions you will never see with your eyes. Even the sense of you, the quiet spark looking out through your awareness, is riding a wave of information that is not confined to the physical brain alone. The strangeness of quantum behavior particles existing in multiple states, vanishing and reappearing, communicating instantaneously across distance, begins to make sense when viewed from the vantage of a higher dimensional framework. What seems impossible in 3 dimensions may be inevitable in 11. Reality is not limited. Our perception is. Imagine living in a house with 11 rooms but only having access to 3. You would shape your life around those 3 rooms, thinking that was the entire structure. But the unseen rooms, the ones behind the invisible walls, still influence everything. The airflow, the pressure, the temperature, the way sound resonates, even the stability of the building itself. The 11th dimension is like that, not a place you travel to, but a deeper layer that has always been shaping the one you inhabit. And here is the astonishing truth. Every moment of your life, you've been sensing hints of it, through intuition, through synchronicity, through dreams that defy physics, through moments of clarity that feel like they arrive from somewhere beyond thought. You are not discovering the 11th dimension, you are remembering it. Scientific bridge. If the 11th dimension is more than poetic speculation, then science, real, testable, mathematical science, must point toward it, and it does. Quietly at first, then unmistakably, as if physics itself were trying to reveal a structure too large, too subtle, too elegant to fit inside the narrow frame of ordinary perception. The story begins with an uncomfortable problem. The universe shouldn't work as smoothly as it does. The forces that govern reality, gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear interactions, behave with a precision so finely tuned that if any one of them varied by even an infinitesimal margin, stars wouldn't form, atoms wouldn't bind, and consciousness would never have emerged. Physicists like Penrose, Hawking, and Susskind wrestled with this puzzle for decades, trying to understand how such perfect balance could arise without invoking cosmic luck. The breakthrough came when researchers attempted to unify the laws of nature to weave all the forces into a single mathematical tapestry. Einstein initiated the quest. String theorists inherited it. But the deeper they pressed into the equations, the clearer the answer became. Our universe can only be unified if it is larger than it appears. Not just larger in size, larger in dimensionality. String theory revealed a startling necessity. Particles are not point-like dots, but vibrating strings of energy that require additional spatial dimensions to maintain mathematical consistency. 10, to be precise. And then came the revelation that those 10 dimensions were merely perspectives of something deeper, an 11-dimensional framework known as M-theory. This wasn't science fiction. It was mathematics insisting on an unseen architectural layer beneath the world we touch. These extra dimensions are not far away. They're here, folded into every point of space, curled into Calabi-Yau manifolds, so small and so intricate that even the most powerful microscopes may never directly reveal them. Yet their geometry shapes the laws of physics the way the structure of a flute shapes the music it produces. Change the geometry and you change the universe. Change the curvature and particles gain new masses, forces shift, reality rearranges itself. The visible universe becomes the outward expression of invisible mathematics humming beneath it like a cosmic engine. But science doesn't stop there. Quantum mechanics hints at dimensions we cannot see through the bizarre behavior of particles that disappear from one location and reappear in another, tunnel through barriers, or maintain instantaneous communication across impossible distances. Einstein called it spooky, but from an 11-dimensional vantage point, it is simply geometry, the natural behavior of objects not confined to our limited 3-dimensional slice. Even consciousness itself refuses to fit neatly inside the boundaries of the brain. Microtubules inside neurons show quantum coherence under conditions once thought impossible, suggesting the mind may interface with quantum structures rather than classical mechanisms. If so, your awareness might already be brushing against the higher dimensional fabric behind reality, dipping into a field not bound by space or time. Science, at its frontier, is whispering the same truth the mystics shouted centuries ago. Reality is larger than it appears, and you are larger than you believe. Ancient parallels. Long before modern physics uncovered hidden dimensions through mathematics, ancient mystics were describing them through direct experience. They lacked particle accelerators, field equations, or quantum models, yet their languages shimmered with insights eerily aligned with what M-theory now suggests. It is as if humanity has been brushing against the deeper architecture of reality for thousands of years, sensing, intuiting, and recording glimpses of what science is only now beginning to articulate. In the Upanishads, consciousness is described as layered 5 sheaths surrounding the self, each more subtle than the last, each penetrating deeper into the invisible. The sages spoke of the Atman not as a soul trapped inside a body, but as something multidimensional, a field of awareness extending beyond space and time, expressing itself through a physical form, the way light expresses itself through a prism. This is not far from the idea that the 3-dimensional you is only a local projection of a higher dimensional structure. Hermeticism taught that the visible world is but a shadow of the invisible, a reflection of reflections, filtered down through planes of existence. The Corpus Hermeticum describes these planes as nested, interpenetrating, and unified by a single underlying consciousness, a description that mirrors the modern view of dimensions curled within dimensions, all operating as one coherent whole. The Tao Te Ching spoke of the 10,000 things arising from the Tao, the limitless, unmanifest source that births all form. The Tao is described not as a place, but as the dimension from which dimensions arise, the ineffable background that shapes the foreground. When Lao Tzu spoke of the uncarved block, he was hinting at a pre-geometric reality that gives rise to the world of shapes and boundaries, a notion astonishingly similar to the pre-space-time realm suggested by quantum gravity research. Even the Kabbalistic tree of life portrays existence as a cascade of emanations flowing from a higher dimensional source into the compressed world of matter. Each sephira is a kind of dimensional layer, shaping the next, until consciousness descends into the physical realm. This ancient map of unfolding reality mirrors the modern view of dimensions, compactifying into the structures we experience as physics, form, and identity. Across cultures, across eras, the same pattern emerges. The world you see is only the surface of something deeper. Rumi described it as a reed pulled from a shore you've forgotten. Plotinus called the physical world a faint tracing of a greater reality. The Gnostics spoke of humanity as having fallen into forgetfulness, believing the three-dimensional world to be all that exists. And the mystics of Persia, India, Egypt, and Greece all insisted that the true self is not contained within the body, but extends into unseen realms, connected to an infinity beyond comprehension. These weren't metaphors, they were attempts to describe experiences of expanded awareness, states in which the boundaries of space, self, and time dissolve, revealing something vast, something structured, something layered. When ancient mystics spoke of hidden realms, subtle bodies, inner worlds, and cosmic unity, they were pointing toward what physics is discovering through equations. That reality is multidimensional, and consciousness is not confined to the visible surface. Science and mysticism are converging two languages describing one truth: human reflection. If the universe is truly woven from 11 dimensions, then the question becomes deeply personal. Why do we feel so small inside something so vast? Why does a multidimensional being wake up each morning feeling like a single, fragile self? The answer lies not in physics, but in the quiet landscape of human experience, the way we come to know ourselves through limitation. You were born into a body designed to perceive only a narrow band of reality, a slice of light, a range of sound, a handful of textures, and a tiny window of time called the present. Everything else, the deeper layers, the hidden dimensions, the wider field of consciousness, was filtered out so you could survive here, inside this thin corridor of existence. And yet, every so often, something slips through, a moment of déjà vu that feels like catching the echo of another timeline, a sudden intuition that arrives with the force of certainty. A dream so vivid it feels like you were living another life in another geometry of space. A feeling of connection with someone you barely know, as if you've met before in some hidden domain your waking mind cannot access. These moments may seem rare, but they are not anomalies, they are reminders. Reminders that the three-dimensional identity you navigate the world with is only the mask, the local interface of something larger. Something that stretches into dimensions you can sense but not see, feel but not measure. Every emotional turning point in your life, heartbreak, awe, grief, profound joy, has carried a strange spaciousness with it. In those moments, the boundary of your body feels porous. You feel more open, more aware, more connected to something invisible but undeniably real. You feel like you are brushing against the deeper architecture of your own being. Think of the way love expands you, stretching your sense of self to include another person. Think of how longing collapses distances inside you. Think of how inspiration arrives from nowhere, as if whispered through a door you cannot see. These are not emotional quirks. They are dimensional leaks, proof that the human heart has access to more than the brain can explain. Behind every decision you've ever made, there is a strange dual awareness. The part of you that plans and the part that knows. The part that reasons and the part that senses. The part that survives and the part that reaches beyond survival for meaning. This duality is not dysfunction, it is dimensional layering. The logical mind lives in 3 dimensions. The deeper intelligence, the one that senses direction, resonance, rightness, lives in many. When you feel drawn toward a life path you cannot justify, when a moment feels significant without explanation, when a choice feels aligned before it makes sense, you are not being irrational. You are listening to the part of you that remembers where you truly exist. And this is the quiet, profound truth. You don't awaken into the 11th dimension by leaving the human experience behind. You awaken by realizing that the human experience was never the full story of you. You've been confined to the visible layers for so long that you've mistaken the surface for the whole. But beneath every ordinary moment, a deeper architecture is pulsing, waiting for you to notice. Emotional frequency. If science tells us that reality is shaped by hidden dimensions, and mysticism tells us that consciousness can touch them, then emotion is the bridge between the two, the living language through which the multidimensional self communicates with the 3-dimensional one. Emotion is not simply a feeling inside the body, it is a frequency, a pattern, a field response. It is the tremor in the fabric of your being that reveals the deeper shape of the dimensions you cannot see. Think of emotion as vibration, not in the vague metaphorical sense, but in the literal way. Your nervous system radiates electrical patterns into the space around you. Every thought, every feeling, every shift in inner state alters the electromagnetic signature your heart emits. The HeartMath Institute showed that this field extends several feet beyond the body, adjusting and responding to the emotional quality of your awareness. But this is only the surface of the phenomenon. The real field does not stop at the skin or the air around you. It stretches inward and outward simultaneously, influencing the subtle structures that live beneath perception structures that may well be rooted in higher dimensions. When you feel joy, your awareness expands. The world feels open, larger, filled with possibility. This expansion isn't imaginary. It reflects a real widening of perceptual bandwidth. Your brain begins to detect patterns it normally overlooks. Your intuition becomes clearer. Your thoughts become more fluid. You feel connected, alive, resonant. In these moments, the boundaries of 3-dimensional identity loosen, and your consciousness seeps outward into the invisible architecture supporting your life. When you feel fear, the opposite happens. Awareness contracts, options narrow, possibility collapses. Reality feels 2-dimensional, flattened, as if you're living behind glass. This contraction is not psychological alone, it is physical, quantum, dimensional. Your attention retreats into the smallest possible space, focusing on survival. The higher layers of your being dim, not because they disappear, but because your awareness can no longer access them. Emotion, then, is the tuning mechanism of consciousness. It determines whether you inhabit the narrow slice of reality your senses provide, or whether you access the wider dimensional landscape you were born from. This is why profound emotions, grief, awe, love, wonder, often break you open. In moments of unbearable loss, people describe feeling outside themselves, as if hovering in a space beyond the physical. In moments of overwhelming beauty, you feel suspended, timeless, expanded. These states strip away the narrow focus of ordinary awareness and reveal a spaciousness that was always there, a spaciousness that belongs not to your mind, but to your deeper dimensional existence. Even intuition itself is an emotional phenomenon. It does not speak in words or logic. It speaks in resonance, a sense of pull, a sense of rightness, a sense of quiet knowing. Intuition is the echo of information moving from higher dimensional layers of your being into the narrow bandwidth of conscious thought. It is the emotional signal your deeper self uses to guide your surface self. You don't need to force access to higher dimensions. You feel your way into them. Emotion is the compass, resonance is the direction, presence is the doorway. Every feeling is a frequency, and every frequency is a thread that leads deeper into what you truly are. Deep dive. To truly understand what it means to exist across 11 dimensions, you must step beyond the idea of dimensions as merely spatial directions. Higher dimensions are not extra rooms in a cosmic mansion. They are layers of meaning, layers of structure, layers of selfhood. They shape not just where you exist, but how you exist and how consciousness unfolds through you. Think of yourself as an orchestra. The three-dimensional body is the visible instrument, wood, metal, strings, keys. But the music you play, the resonance you create, the emotion you transmit, comes from layers that lie far beyond the physical structure. Higher dimensions are the resonant chambers of that instrument, shaping the tone, the depth, the complexity of your experience. The first layer is the physical, the body, the senses, the immediate world. This is the surface, the part of you most people mistake for the whole. Beneath that lies the emotional layer, not confined to neurons, but stretched through your entire electromagnetic field. Emotions shift the resonance of your being, the way tension shifts the pitch of a string. Beneath that is the mental layer, thoughts, ideas, the symbolic structures you use to navigate life. Yet even this layer is not fully yours. It is influenced by collective fields, cultural patterns, inherited archetypes. Beneath that lies intuition, the quiet knowing that does not think but recognizes. Intuition is not a guess, it is a fractal perception, an awareness that reaches into the patterns forming beneath the visible surface of events. Beneath that is the archetypal layer, the realm Jung described, where symbols are not created by the mind but discovered like continents in the ocean of consciousness. These archetypes are not psychological decorations, they are dimensional shapes of the human experience, templates for growth and meaning. Deeper still is the field of pure awareness, the part of you that observes thought, emotion, identity, and even time itself. This layer does not change, it only reveals. And then there is the final layer, the one the mystics, physicists, and philosophers have all pointed toward in their own language. The source field, the unbounded dimension where all possibilities exist before they crystallize into form. The place where quantum potential becomes lived reality. The dimension where the universe remembers itself through you. Each of these layers corresponds to a deeper dimensional structure, a more subtle form of organization. In 3 dimensions, you appear singular, but in 11 dimensions, you are a hierarchy of presence, a network of meanings braided together, each influencing the others, each extending into realms your senses cannot detect. And here is the paradox. You experience these layers every day without recognizing them, every dream that bends the rules of physics, every flash of insight that arrives without thought, every synchronicity that feels too precise to be random, every moment of stillness where you feel yourself expand beyond the body. These are not anomalies, they are glimpses of the multidimensional being you have always been. You don't ascend into higher dimensions, you remember them. Collapse of separation. If there is one illusion the human mind clings to with extraordinary devotion, it is the illusion of separation. The sense that you are here and reality is there, that your thoughts are private, your emotions contained, your choices isolated inside a single line of time. Yet the deeper you move into the architecture of the 11th dimension, the more this illusion begins to dissolve. What you call you is not a boundary, it is a viewpoint, a perspective through which an interconnected field experiences itself. Separation is a perceptual artifact created by a nervous system evolved to survive in a world of visible surfaces. Your senses are filters, not windows. They show you just enough reality to navigate the physical world, but not so much that the deeper unity would overwhelm your capacity to function. But although the senses constrain your perception, they do not constrain your being. At the quantum level, nothing is isolated. Every particle exists as part of an entangled web, responding instantaneously to what happens elsewhere. At the dimensional level, nothing is disconnected. Every point in space contains curled structures that invisibly link it to all others, and at the conscious level, nothing is separate. Every thought, emotion, and intention ripples outward, influencing the fields you share with all living beings. The collapse of separation begins when you realize that the boundaries you rely on between self and other, inner and outer, mind and world, are conveniences, not truths. You think your thoughts originate within your brain, yet the ideas you encounter, the feelings you experience, the intuition that guides you, arise from a field far larger than your synapses. You think your emotions are personal, yet they resonate across electromagnetic gradients that interact with other hearts and minds. You think your consciousness is confined inside your skull, yet in moments of silence, it stretches into a spaciousness that cannot be located in any physical place. When the illusion of separation thins, everything changes. You begin to sense the invisible architecture connecting you to people you love and also to strangers you've never met. You recognize that the thoughts you project into the world return to you in unexpected forms. You experience how intention shapes circumstance, not because of magic, but because the field of consciousness is continuous across dimensions. Even time loses its rigidity. Memories feel alive because they are not gone. They are stored in the architecture of the field. Future possibilities feel present because they already exist in higher dimensional potential. And the now this moment becomes the intersection where all dimensions meet. You are not a separate observer looking out at a distant universe. You are a point of awareness inside an indivisible whole. The collapse of separation is not the destruction of individuality. It is the recognition that individuality is a wave, not a boundary. A way in which the universe expresses itself temporarily through a single lens. When you feel connection, empathy, intuition, or love, you are not reaching out. You are remembering that the distance was never real. Living between worlds. Once the illusion of separation begins to dissolve, the question naturally arises: how do you live your ordinary human life while rooted in the awareness of a multidimensional self? Awakening is not an escape from the world, nor a rejection of the three-dimensional experience. It is a widening, a softening, a recognition that the physical realm is one layer of a much larger continuum and that each layer has its own purpose. Integration begins with a simple truth: you are meant to live in all dimensions at once. Your physical life, the routines, conversations, decisions, relationships, is not separate from the deeper dimensions. It is the expression of them. The three-dimensional world is where the invisible becomes visible, where potentials crystallize into form, where the vastness of your being narrows itself into a single line of experience so it can learn, create, and evolve. To integrate means to honor the human life without losing sight of the deeper architecture behind it. It means recognizing that your emotions are not obstacles, but instruments tuning forks that reveal how aligned you are with your deeper self. It means seeing intuition not as a luxury, but as a sense organ for navigating multidimensional information. It means treating synchronicities as feedback from the underlying field, rather than coincidences to be dismissed. When you begin to live this way, your actions shift. You no longer force outcomes. You listen for them. You no longer cling to identities, you allow them to flow. You no longer chase meaning, you uncover it in the quiet alignment between your choices and the resonance you feel in your body. You start to realize that every moment has two faces, the physical event that unfolds in front of you and the deeper pattern behind it, the part shaped by fields of consciousness, archetypal structures, quantum potentials, and the geometry of the hidden dimensions you inhabit. This awareness brings a strange kind of clarity. You see that life isn't happening to you, it's happening through you. The challenges you face become less like punishments and more like invitations, opportunities for the deeper layers of your consciousness to reshape the surface. The moments of confusion become thresholds. The moments of fear become contractions before expansion. The moments of longing become signals from the parts of your being that remember something more. Integration doesn't make life easier, but it makes it deeper. You begin to feel a quiet companionship with your own existence, as if the universe is no longer a distant, indifferent expanse, but a field you participate in, a field that responds to the quality of your awareness. The 11th dimension becomes less of a concept and more of a felt presence, and slowly, without effort, you discover that living multidimensionally does not mean leaving humanity behind. It means bringing the vastness of your higher dimensional self into the simplicity of each moment, into a breath, a conversation, a decision, a touch, a thought. You remain fully human, but you are no longer only human. Final transmission. If you've journeyed with me to this point, something subtle has already shifted inside you, not because of the ideas themselves, but because of the field they awaken, the faint, familiar vibration that stirs when you recognize a truth you didn't learn, but somehow always knew, the truth that you are not a visitor to the deeper dimensions of reality. You are their expression. The 11th dimension is not a destination waiting at the edge of the cosmos. It is the silent architecture beneath every heartbeat, every insight, every moment of awareness you've ever experienced. You have never lived outside it. You have only lived with your attention turned toward the surface, believing the surface to be the whole. But tonight, the deeper layers have begun to reveal themselves not through spectacle, but through remembrance. If you close your eyes, you can feel it, that faint shimmering around your thoughts, the quiet spaciousness behind your breath, the subtle hum in the center of your being. This is not imagination. It is the multidimensional presence that has always carried you, even when you felt alone, even when you doubted your place in the world. You are not an isolated consciousness floating through an indifferent universe. You are a doorway through which the universe knows itself. And this is the final revelation. You have been multidimensional from the beginning. You only forgot long enough to learn who you are. Everything you've ever experienced, love, loss, curiosity, fear, joy, has been shaped by the interplay between the visible and invisible layers of your being. Your intuition is the whisper of your higher dimensional self. Your emotions are the ripples of resonance between layers. Your dreams are the realms where the deeper architecture briefly becomes visible. Your synchronicities are reminders from the field that the boundaries you believe in are permeable, and your longing for meaning is not a flaw, it is the echo of the dimensions you came from. You are not trying to transcend the human experience. You are here to infuse it with the depth of your true nature. To live as an 11-dimensional being doesn't require special abilities or mystical techniques. It requires presence, attunement, the willingness to listen inward before moving outward, the courage to trust resonance over fear, the humility to recognize that you are a single expression of something immeasurably vast, and the grace to let that vastness move through your everyday moments. Because the true miracle isn't that the universe contains 11 dimensions, it's that you do. And As you continue through your life making choices, forming connections, seeking truth, creating beauty, you will feel the deeper dimensions guiding you, not with commands, but with alignment, with clarity, with the quiet knowing that you are exactly where you need to be to unfold the next layer of yourself. Let this be your reminder. Every breath is a point of contact between dimensions. Every moment is a meeting place of the visible and the invisible. Every thought is a ripple across the deeper architecture of reality. You are not just in the universe. You are the universe, perceiving itself through a human lens. This is Quantum Quest, where consciousness becomes the experiment.